Before the story begins, let me say this quietly. If you're someone who listens with your whole heart, if you believe silence can speak louder than words, and if stories like this make you pause, breathe, and feel something deeper, subscribe to the channel. Not because you have to, but because stories like this take time. And I tell them for people who are willing to stay until the very end. Now, let me take you back to the night, where nothing obvious happened. And yet, everything changed. He pulled his hand away slowly. Not suddenly, not as if startled, but carefully, almost unwillingly, as though waking from a dream too vivid, too intimate, to abandon all at once. I didn't move. I stayed exactly where I was, my breathing measured, controlled, quiet enough not to disturb the air between us. My pulse was steady, but only because I forced it to be. The warmth he'd left behind on my skin lingered longer than it should have, radiating faintly, not just across the surface, but deeper, settling into something harder to name. The room itself seemed to pause with us. You know that kind of stillness, the kind that doesn't feel empty but sacred. Like the moment just before a truth reveals itself. Like the second before someone speaks the words that change everything. My robe had slipped slightly from my shoulder. I noticed it. I chose not to fix it. Not yet. There are moments when silence does more than conversation ever could. When movement would only interrupt what's already being said without language. That night wasn't about what happened. It was about what lingered after. About the realization that sometimes care becomes confession. That intention can hide beneath the softest gesture. That even the gentlest touch can carry meaning far beyond itself. When it all began, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt considerate. A simple act of comfort. A response to something I'd noticed quietly building in him over weeks. The way his shoulders never fully relaxed. The way exhaustion lived in his voice even when he tried to sound fine. The way he carried responsibility like a weight he refused to set down. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself it was kindness. But even as I prepared the room, part of me already knew. It wasn't just that. The towel was laid out carefully, smoothed twice to remove imaginary creases. The scent of eucalyptus drifted through the air, calm and grounding. The kind that slows your thoughts without asking permission. It made the room feel separate from time. As though whatever happened here wouldn't follow the same rules as the rest of the world. I adjusted a small corner near his shoulder, careful not to startle him, and leaned close enough that my voice didn't need to be loud. Just breathe. I whispered. I'm right here. His eyes fluttered shut. A faint smile touched his lips, small, unguarded. He trusted easily. Too easily, maybe. Then she entered. Graceful. Quiet. Certain. Her presence filled the space without demanding attention, without explanation. Her hair was swept back, her posture composed, every movement deliberate but gentle. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate either. When her palms met his shoulders, the shift was immediate. Something in him loosened. Not dramatically, no sudden release but softly. Like a knot slowly giving way. A tension he hadn't realized he was holding finally found permission to unravel. I stayed at the edge of the room unseen. He believed I had stepped away, that I'd arranged this moment and left him alone with it. He didn't know I was still there, watching in silence as calm spread through him, inch by inch. Her hands moved with practiced rhythm. Not possessive. Not distant. Fluent. A language that didn't require words. His breathing deepened. His fingers twitched faintly, just a reflex maybe, but to me it felt like awareness beginning to surface. Like something dormant inside him stirring awake. She paused briefly, her tone light but knowing. Steady now, she murmured. The words weren't really for him. They were for the moment itself. He didn't respond, but a faint line appeared between his brows. Recognition flickered beneath the calm. Something inside him shifted. Not resistance, not fear, but understanding. I leaned forward slightly, watching the transformation. The way peace replaced strain. The way surrender arrived quietly, like dusk settling across still water. When I finally stood, she noticed first. Our eyes met. A silent question passed between us. I gave her a small nod. She understood. I moved closer, taking a seat beside him, close enough that my presence brushed against his awareness. I placed my hand lightly on his arm. His breath caught. His eyes opened briefly, disoriented, soft, searching. Then he saw me. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Realization flickered across his face. Not shock. Something gentler than that. He understood I'd never left. That this calm hadn't happened by accident. That it had been shaped, not to control him, but to give him something he'd forgotten he was allowed to have. She continued quietly, her movements steady, uninterrupted. The air had changed now. It was denser, meaningful, charged with things left unsaid. When she glanced back at me, her eyes asked one final time, "Are you sure?" "Yes," I whispered. "This is for him." The words steadied me. He turned slightly toward my voice, his expression uncertain but trusting. He didn't yet understand that this wasn't about the moment itself. It was about what it represented. About being seen without expectation. About being allowed to rest without having to earn it. The rest unfolded in near silence. Her touch slowed, becoming almost meditative. Every motion carried the same unspoken message. You don't have to hold everything together right now. Outside, the light faded into gold and gray. Inside, the air felt heavy, but gentle. The kind of peace that feels rare, because it doesn't demand anything in return. He was calmer now. Grounded. Present. I brushed my hand against his arm. A reminder that he wasn't alone. His fingers shifted slightly, resting over mine. The gesture was small, almost accidental, but filled with understanding. She finished quietly, stepping back, her presence retreating like a tide that knows when to pull away. He opened his eyes fully, blinking against the softened light. The clarity in them startled me. Not because he was waking, but because something had been released. I smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Better?" I asked. He let out a quiet laugh, more breath than sound. "Better," he repeated softly. I didn't realize how much I needed that. "I know," I said. She gathered her things without a word. Before leaving, she met my eyes and offered a small, knowing smile. The kind that acknowledges everything that was shared without needing to name it. When the door closed behind her, the room felt different. Quieter. Still. Complete. He turned toward me, his gaze steady but heavy with meaning. "You planned this," he said. I nodded. He didn't ask why, but I answered anyway. "Because you forget how to stop," I said softly. "You give until there's nothing left. And I just wanted you to remember what it feels like to rest." He didn't reply. He reached for my hand and held it. The silence between us was no longer tense. It was calm. Finally calm. Finally enough. The room stayed still long after the door closed. Not empty, never empty, but settled, as though it had witnessed something fragile and decided to protect it by keeping quiet. The air carried the faint trace of eucalyptus and warmth, mixed now with something else I couldn't quite identify. Relief maybe. Or recognition. He was still holding my hand. Not tightly. Not loosely. Just enough to remind us both that the connection hadn't dissolved with the moment. I didn't rush to speak. Neither did he. There's a kind of silence that presses on you, demanding explanation. This wasn't that. This silence felt earned. Comfortable. Like the kind that comes after a long confession. When there's nothing left to justify. His thumb moved slowly, absent-mindedly tracing the side of my finger. The gesture wasn't intentional, not at first. It was something his body did before his mind caught up. When he realized what he was doing, he stopped. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For what?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to the far wall, unfocused, like he was searching through memory instead of space. "For being so tired," he finally said. "For not noticing how bad it had gotten." I shook my head. "That wasn't something you were supposed to notice," I said gently. "It was something you were carrying." He exhaled slowly, like the words gave him permission to let go of something else too. People think exhaustion is obvious, that it announces itself loudly. But real fatigue is subtle. It hides behind responsibility. It dresses itself up as strength. It convinces you that stopping would mean failing. I'd watched him fall into that trap quietly. Day by day, week by week. He sat up slightly now, running a hand through his hair. The movement was slower than usual, careful, like he was still learning the shape of calm. I didn't know how tense I was, he said. I thought this was just normal. That's what makes it dangerous, I replied. When pressure feels like home. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. Not searching. Not defensive. Just open. How long have you been worried about me, he asked. I hesitated. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because the truth deserved to be handled carefully. Long enough to stop asking you if you were okay, I said. And start paying attention to the way you said you were. That earned a quiet smile. Not amused, grateful. He leaned back against the cushions, eyes closing again, but this time not out of collapse. This time, it felt like choice. I don't remember the last time I felt this still, he said. Still. The word lingered between us. Still doesn't mean empty. Still doesn't mean weak. Still means present. I watched his chest rise and fall, slower now deeper. There was a softness to him that hadn't been there before. Not vulnerability exactly, but release. And release can be unsettling. Because when the tension leaves, you're left alone with yourself. I didn't realize how much I've been holding, he murmured. Even when I sleep, I'm bracing for something. I nodded. I know, I said. You never rest. You just pause. His eyes opened again, thoughtful. Why did you stay? He asked suddenly. The question was gentle, but direct. Why didn't you leave the room? I could have answered a dozen different ways. Because I wanted to make sure he was okay. Because I needed to see it through. Because part of me wasn't ready to let go of the moment. But the truth was quieter than all of that. Because I didn't want you to feel alone afterward, I said. That did it. Something in his expression shifted. Not dramatically, but deeply. Like a door opening somewhere inside him that hadn't been unlocked in a long time. He sat up a little more, turning toward me fully now. That mattered, he said. More than the rest of it. I met his gaze. That was the point. Another silence followed. This one was different, heavier, more contemplative. The kind that comes when understanding settles in and starts rearranging things. Does it change anything? He asked quietly. I thought about that. Moments like this always feel like turning points. But life doesn't always move in clean chapters. Sometimes change happens subtly, reshaping the way you move through the same routines. Yes, I said finally, but not in the way you think. He waited. It doesn't change what we are, I continued. It changes how gently we treat it. He considered that, nodding slowly. I don't want to go back to how it was, he admitted. I don't think I can. You don't have to, I replied. But you do have to notice when you're slipping. He gave a soft laugh. That's the hard part. I'll help, I said. He looked at me again, searching this time, not for reassurance, but for sincerity. Will you, he asked. Yes. No hesitation. No condition. Because caring isn't about grand gestures. It's about staying present when things grow quiet. About recognizing when strength needs permission to rest. He leaned forward then, resting his forehead briefly against mine. Not dramatic. Not urgent. Just close enough to share breath. Thank you, he whispered. I closed my eyes. For trusting me, I replied. We stayed like that for a while. Long enough for the light outside to dim further, long enough for the room to feel entirely removed from the rest of the world. Eventually he pulled back, calmer, clearer. I think, he said slowly, I need to learn how to stop before someone else has to remind me. I smiled. That's a good place to start.